Howdy. Thank you for taking time to watch this short video. I'm Grandpa. I'm going to tell you a little short story about some fun I had as a kid growing up in Panhandle, Texas back in the 1950s. Back in those days, we didn't have all the electronic gadgets that the kids have today, or even when my kids were kids. Basically, most of the entertainment we had, you had to figure it out for yourself and find things to do to entertain yourselves. Now, except on Saturday mornings, we'd have a few cartoons and Howdy Doody and Roy Rogers, and that's about the only children's entertainment that they had on TV back in those days. And living out in the country, generally it was pretty fuzzy, and of course it's black and white. So, if we weren't doing chores and had nothing to do, it is left up to our own imaginations to find things to do to entertain ourselves and have fun. Now, my dad raised a total of 7 kids, but back in the 50s, he only had 6. There's myself, I'm the oldest, 3 younger sisters, and 2 younger brothers. And of course, being the oldest, I was generally the ringleader of the pack and figuring out things for us to do for fun. However, there was occasions that I would think up things for myself to do for fun, and generally at the expense of my younger brothers and sisters. Now, we always had an old dog laying around outside, or maybe even 2 sometimes. They just there to, for whatever reason, my dad had them, but we always had a dog, at least one, and never worried about treating them for fleas or getting shots or none of that other stuff. They're just old country dogs, and they live the old country life. Well, one Saturday morning, I got to thinking I wasn't too interested in what was on the TV, and it was kind of fuzzy, and I got to thinking of some ways to entertain myself and have some fun. Now, I knew that the old dog that's laying out there on the porch had a bunch of fleas, and I got to thinking how much fun that would be to catch a bunch of them fleas and put them in my sister's hair. I had 2 sisters at the time that were my primary targets. So what I did is I went out there and sat down on the porch, and I picked me off a handful of fleas, and I went back into the house, and these 2 sisters sitting there on the couch watching TV, and I just casually walked by them like nothing was happening, and they wouldn't pay any attention to me because I was focused on TV, and I sprinkled a few fleas in each one of them's hair. Well, of course, I wanted to see how they were going to react when the fleas started moving around, so I kind of sat over in another chair and kept an eye on my sisters. And after a few minutes, it's kind of subtle. Initially, you'd reach up there and they'd scratch their head a little bit, and with one hand. A few minutes later, they'd scratch with another hand in a different place of their head. Eventually, they got to where they was really scratching. And of course, the more they scratched, the more entertained I was, and was making me happy. And I eventually started laughing, of course, instead of just smiling. And they looked at me like, well, what was I laughing about? And I just had to tell them, well, you guys got fleas. Well, that didn't work too well, because they got pretty mad, and they run into Mama and told her that I'd put fleas in their hair, and the end result of that little escapade was I got me a good whipping out of the deal. But I thought at the time it was probably worth it just to have the fun I had and watch my sisters grabbing at their head and scratching, carrying on. And of course, they had to go get their heads washed. They washed their hair and get them fleas out of there. And but Mama wasn't too happy with me. Anyway, it's a short story, not much to it, but it's a true story, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please pass it on. If you can, please subscribe. Come back and see me again sometime. Thanks for listening.